I hadn't even made it past the entrance when the first blow landed. There it was, sitting on the edge of the reception table, nestled neatly between the elegant place cards and a silver tray of guest pins, a small, white rectangle with my name printed in bold. Lucy, the family disappointment. It took me a few seconds to register the words. At first, I thought I had misread it. Perhaps my eyes were deceiving me. Maybe the lightning had hit the lettering wrong. But no, it was there. The clarity was unparalleled. Not Lucy, daughter of the host. Not even just Lucy, but the family disappointment. I stared at it. My breath caught. My fingers tingled with something sharp and cold, like static in a winter storm. The world around me continued as if nothing had happened. Laughter, glasses clinking, the sound of a jazz band warming up in the distance. But for me, everything else faded into a dull blur. I had experienced insults in numerous subtle ways in the past. Karen was an expert in that art, backhanded compliments, harmless jokes, questions with poisoned edges. But this wasn't subtle. We performed a calculation. Deliberate. I reached out slowly, fingers brushing the smooth plastic surface. My heart beat hard in my chest, not from sadness, not even from embarrassment, but from rage so quiet, so focused, it almost felt calm. What kind of person goes out of their way to humiliate someone like this? I didn't have to ask. I already knew. Laughter bubbled from the nearby bar. The laughter was familiar, high-pitched, and mocking. I didn't have to turn my head to see whose voice it was. Karen, my ever-grinning, ever-condescending stepmother, was already watching. I could feel her eyes on me like heat through glass. I turned slowly, and there she was. She was dressed in wine-red silk, holding a glass of Chardonnay, and standing next to a group of guests who adored every carefully curated story she told. What happened when our eyes met? She smiled. That same tight, smug smile that always said, "I win." For a second, I considered walking over, saying something, making a scene. My hand clenched around the name tag so tightly, I could feel the plastic edges digging into my palm. What would happen if I shattered it right there in front of her? Or better yet, tossed it into her drink? But no, not tonight. The subject matter was not just another petty jab. The conversation wasn't just about me anymore. The task was a test, a challenge, a setup. Karen wanted a reaction. She wanted me to break, to snap, to raise my voice, storm out, and confirm every ugly thing she'd ever said about me, that I was unstable, ungrateful, and dramatic. And so instead, I breathed in slow and deep. I opened my fingers and gently, deliberately, placed the name tag back down. I aligned it perfectly with the edge of the table, as if it didn't bother me at all. Then I turned back toward the party, lifted my chin, and walked inside. But I wasn't okay. That tag wasn't just a joke. It was a declaration, a statement. This statement serves as a reminder that, regardless of my actions, I would never be considered a part of this house. I was the outsider, the failure. The daughter did not measure up. She left their perfect kingdom and built something new, so I was punished. I stepped into the glittering ballroom chandeliers above, white linen tables below, music swelling around me like fog, and I realized something. This isn't my family's house anymore. It's a stage, a masquerade. I'm not here to be part of the act. This time is not the right moment. I will never do this again. The journey began long before the name tag. I arrived before the champagne. Before the cold stares and careful insults, there was just me and Dad. When I close my eyes, I can still feel the warmth of his hand wrapped around mine as we cross the street together, his fingers big, strong but always gentle. I remember the way he used to hoist me up onto his shoulders so I could see the fireworks better on the 4th of July. I was a young girl with pigtails who was incapable of catching a ball, yet he would address me as champ. But he didn't care. He cheered for me like I was the most important person in the world. In our tiny backyard, he taught me how to throw a baseball. Every time I missed, he'd say, "That's okay. Try again, Lucy. You'll get it." And on stormy nights when thunder rattled the windows, I'd crawl into his bed, and he'd hold me until I fell asleep, his voice low and calming, promising that everything would be okay. I believed him. It was because of him that I felt safe back then, protected, loved. He wasn't perfect, no parent is, but he was mine. He made me feel like I mattered. The situation remained unchanged until she arrived. I was 10 when he met Karen. I remember the day he introduced us, his eyes bright, his smile a little nervous. Lucy, this is Karen. She's going to be a part of our lives now. Karen was beautiful. She was blonde, stylish, and always wore a perfume that smelled like roses dipped in syrup. She bent down to my level, cupped my face with both hands, and said in that soft, sugary voice, "We're going to be such a joyful family, sweetheart, just like in the movies." And I, being 10 and still believing in fairy tales, smiled and nodded. I thought maybe this wouldn't be so bad. I was wrong, so very wrong. At first, it was little things. Dad stopped picking me up from school because he had errands with Karen. Friday night marathons of movies became date nights. He missed my school play but showed up at Olivia's ballet recital in a tuxedo. "Sorry, champ," he said, ruffling my hair. "I'll make it next time." But the next time never came. Suddenly, I wasn't champ anymore. I was just Lucy, the girl who was expected to adapt. It was my responsibility to adapt and blend in. Accepting that our home now had new rules, new faces, and new priorities was crucial. Karen's children, Olivia and Hunter, were picture perfect. Olivia was delicate and graceful. Hunter was charming and athletic. Together, they were the dream duo. And me? I was just the leftover piece from an old life they were trying to forget. Karen never raised her voice. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she smiled and redirected the conversation. "Olivia spilled the milk? Lucy, be a dear and clean it up. Hunter forgot his homework? Lucy, help him finish it. Don't pout, Lucy. You're the older one. You should know better. Older." That was always the excuse. I was older, so I should be more mature. I was older, so I shouldn't expect attention. I was older, so I didn't need my father the way they did. And Dad? He let it happen. Worse, he justified it. "Lucy, come on. Don't make the task harder than it needs to be. Karen's doing her best. We're all trying here." No, they were trying to replace me. And slowly, painfully, they succeeded. The house became quieter for me. Smaller, colder. I was still living there, but I no longer felt truly present. I became the ghost in my own home. I was 18 when the final thread snapped. By then, I had already grown used to being the background noise in my father's home. Olivia and Hunter had fully taken center stage, and I had become useful, a babysitter, a dishwasher. The dishwasher in question is the mature one. He's the one who remains invisible to others. But I still had one thing left that was mine. I am managing my mother's college fund. Before she passed, my mom had worked multiple jobs to save for my future. She aimed to use every dollar and cent to provide me with a fresh start. I wanted to leave the chilly environment in which I was living. My goal was to establish a life of my own. I remember sitting in my room late at night, staring at that account online, refreshing it over and over again like it was a secret doorway to freedom. That number gave me strength during the worst moments. It reminded me that one day I would leave. And then one afternoon, just a few weeks before college started, I opened the account. Balance? $0. Oh, I blinked. I have refreshed the page. The user logged out and then logged back in. Nothing had changed. The money had vanished. I rushed downstairs, shaking, heart pounding. My father was in the living room, reclining with a beer in one hand, Karen on the couch next to him, flipping through a catalog. They looked relaxed, comfortable. It was as though nothing had happened. I asked him directly. My voice was barely audible. "Where's the money, Dad?" He looked up, surprised but not guilty. "Oh, I used it," he said simply, like he was talking about milk he forgot to replace. "You? Used it? That was mine. That was from Mom," he shrugged. Hunter needed help with tuition. "You can get scholarships, right? You're resourceful." The air left my lungs. He had taken the last thing my mother ever gave me without asking, without telling, and gave it to Karen's son. I looked at him, waiting for a hint of regret. There was a glimmer of guilt in his eyes. Something. Anything. But he just turned back to his beer. That was the moment everything changed. I felt something inside me crack, not in a dramatic, shattering way, but quietly, like a rope worn thin finally giving way. I had spent years trying to earn his love, his attention, and his pride, and now I knew He didn't see me. He never had. I didn't cry. I refrained from crying in their presence. I packed that night. I had only a single suitcase with some clothes, my worn out laptop, and the leftover bills I had scraped together from part time jobs. Karen didn't ask where I was going. She didn't even look up from her magazine. My father stood in the hallway watching me zip up my bag. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. "Lucy," he said, "don't be dramatic. This is just how families work." I paused, hand on the doorknob. "No," I said quietly. "This is how your family works, not mine." And I walked out. It was a hot August night. The streetlights buzzed overhead. I remember standing on the curb with my bag and realizing that I had nowhere to go. No plan, no backup. All that matters is the unwavering determination to never return. I boarded a bus to the city, the kind that smelled like engine oil and desperation. I sat by the window, gripping my backpack, staring out at the passing lights. And I will succeed on my own. Promise. I will make it. On my own. And I will never let them make me feel small again. There's something strange about starting over with nothing. At first, it feels terrifying. It's akin to plummeting into the depths of darkness, with no one to save you. But after a while, that fear hardens into something else focus. After I left, I moved into a tiny studio apartment not far from campus. The apartment had cheap rent, thin walls, and unpredictable plumbing, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I could shut the door and know that no one would come in to tell me I was too much, too emotional, or too disappointed. I worked 3 jobs. I work as a waitress in the mornings. During the day, I serve as a campus library assistant. Freelance graphic design work at night. Some days, I slept 4 hours if I was lucky. I drank instant coffee for dinner and skipped lunch more times than I could count. I learned how to stretch $20 across a whole week, but I never complained. There was no one to complain to. My father never called. Karen never reached out. Hunter, the boy who had taken what was mine, posted pictures online of beach trips and frat parties, all funded by the money my mother had worked years to save. And Olivia? She flaunted her new apartment with a rooftop view, gushed about her designer bags, and updated her status with inspirational quotes about being grateful. Not once did any of them ask if I was okay, but I didn't expect them to. I didn't want their pity. I wanted distance. And in that silence, I built something of my own. I threw myself into my studies. I graduated with honors, not that anyone from my family noticed. No one sent flowers. No one showed up. While other students hugged their parents and posed for pictures, I walked across the stage alone. But I held my head high. I was aware of the situation. I knew what it had cost me to get there. All those nights I came home with sore feet and aching shoulders. All the mornings I woke up on a mattress on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed frame. Despite doubting myself, I persevered. I didn't need applause. I just needed freedom. Still, even after all of that, the past had a way of finding me. Every few months, I'd receive an invitation. A birthday party, a holiday dinner. There was also a wedding shower. Not because they wanted me there. Not really. However, their decision to invite me made them look good. It let them say, "See, we're still a family." And for a little while, I gave in. I went to 1 or 2 events thinking maybe, just maybe, things would be different now. I was hopeful that my father might finally see me. I am hopeful that Karen's perspective will change. I hoped that Olivia and Hunter would recognize my progress. But every time I walked through their doors, I was reminded they hadn't changed. One Christmas, Olivia greeted me with a smile too sweet to be real and said, "Still doing that little freelance thing?" My father chuckled, drink in hand. "If you want a real job, I could make a few calls." He treated everything I had built as if it meant nothing unless he approved it. I didn't argue, I just nodded politely, excused myself, and left. That was the last time I accepted an invitation. No more dinners, no more reunions. There will be no more pretending. I blocked Karen's number. I muted the group chats. I ignored the passive-aggressive messages from relatives who said I was being cold. But I wasn't being cold. I was protecting myself. They had taught me how to live without them. And I had learned that lesson well. Years passed. I built a life brick by brick, boundary by boundary. I grew into someone I was proud of, someone independent, someone resilient. I wasn't rich, but I was free, and there's no paycheck in the world that can buy that. And yet, the invitations kept coming. Every birthday, every holiday. Every time my father wanted to play the role of doting patriarch, a card would appear in my mailbox neatly written, always formal. You are cordially invited to attend. But I never felt invited. I felt summoned. For appearances, for politeness. So he could say, "See? She's still part of the family." I declined them all until one day I didn't. I don't know why I said yes to Olivia's wedding. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I had changed. Perhaps a part of me still yearns for visibility. To be acknowledged? I wore a sleek red dress, nothing extravagant, but enough to make a statement. My hair was tied back in a neat bun. My heels clicked on the marble floor of the reception hall like punctuation marks. And when I walked in, the room turned. The delay was not due to my tardiness, but because I didn't look like the failure they expected. I saw the flicker of surprise in my father's eyes the moment he spotted me. For a heartbeat, he said nothing, just stared. Then, as if correcting himself, he cleared his throat and approached with a practiced smile. "Lucy," he said, "didn't think you'd come." "Neither did I replied. He reviewed me like an employer scanning a resume he didn't ask for. "So, have you found a stable job yet?" I almost laughed. Even now, he struggles to articulate the words. "I'm proud of you." "Not even. How are you?" "I didn't find one," I said. "I built one." His eyebrows twitched. He nodded slowly, lips pressed in that familiar disapproving line. "Well, if you ever want a real career, please let me know. I still have some contacts. I want to pursue a real career." It was as if my possessions didn't exist until he confirmed their authenticity. It seemed as though success was only meaningful if it aligned with his path. I stared at him not with anger, not with pain, but with something colder, something final. "No need, Dad," I said softly. "You can be proud of me. Or not. It doesn't matter anymore." He blinked. That was the first time I saw it hesitation. It was the kind of hesitation that creeps in when someone realizes they're no longer in control. He wanted to respond. His intention was to correct me. I was reminded that I remained the child in the equation. But I was no longer a child. And he was no longer someone I needed. I walked away from him that night without looking back. It wasn't that I was trying to prove something, but rather that there was nothing left to prove. I am not talking to him. I am not talking to any of them. That night, I blocked the next invitation before I even opened it. I don't understand why I went. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the weight of too many ignored invitations. Or maybe I just wanted to look into the eyes of the people who once broke me and show them. I didn't bleed anymore. My father's birthday party was as grand as ever. The mansion glowed with soft golden lights. A valet took my keys. The sound of a string quartet floated through the open doors. Waiters moved like shadows, offering glasses of champagne and tiny hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce. Everyone wore their best attire. And me? I came in wearing quiet confidence. There is no family ring in my possession. My purse contains no old photos. I am only wearing red lipstick and maintaining a calm resolve. At first, no one noticed me. I slipped in like a ghost, uninvited by heart, but expected by formality. The guests were already deep in conversation, swirling drinks, exchanging polished laughter. I made my way toward the check-in table, more out of habit than interest. A woman I didn't recognize handed me a name tag. I took it without looking, but when I did, I stopped breathing for half a second. Lucy the Family Disappointment, there it was. It was written in black ink, bold font. This is a label, not a name. They passed off a cruel joke as humor. I froze. It was not from embarrassment, rather, it was from sheer audacity. They could have ignored me. They could have left me out altogether. But instead, someone had gone through the trouble to design this little tag to brand me like a warning label, a punchline. Behind me, laughter erupted from the bar. I didn't need to turn around to see if it was Karen. Her voice, light and theatrical, cut through the room like a knife soaked in sugar. I could almost hear her now. "Oh, come on, it's just a joke." No, it wasn't. This was never a joke. This was who they wanted me to be forever. He was the one who couldn't take a joke. This individual consistently overreacted to situations. This individual is known for being delicate, the outsider. I stared at the tag for a long time, my fingers pressing so tightly into the plastic that I could feel the edges biting into my skin. My chest rose and fell, not with panic, but with clarity. I could have ripped it in half. I could have marched across the room and thrown it in Karen's face. I could have yelled, cried, or demanded an apology. But that's what she wanted. That's what they all wanted. A performance. A spectacle. It served as evidence that I remained the same emotional, unstable girl who struggled to fit in. Instead, I took a breath, and I put the tag back down gently. Precisely. It was exactly where it was supposed to be. It felt as though it carried no weight at all. Then I turned toward the bar, lifted a glass of champagne from a tray, and sipped it slowly. I let the bubbles tickle the roof of my mouth, and let the silence around me settle like dust. When our eyes met mine and Karen's, the first smiled. Not with joy, not with sadness. However, there is power involved. Her smirk faltered, just slightly. A few minutes later, my father approached. He didn't mention the tag. He didn't inquire about my well-being. He just looked at me with that same calm indifference he always wore. I didn't think you'd come. Neither did I. He stared at me for a moment, then asked, "Still doing that job? Which one? The company you're running?" "Yes," I said, sipping again. "And it's doing better than ever." He nodded. He did not nod with pride. This is not done out of interest. Just acknowledgement. Good for you. Then he turned away, back into the crowd that had always mattered more. And that's when I knew. This party wasn't a celebration. It was a test. This is one last attempt to remind me of where I stood. But they had made a mistake. They invited the wrong version of me. I had no plan, no script. I had no clever lines rehearsed in my head. But something in me refused to stay silent any longer. I stood near the bar, swirling the last of my champagne, watching as the same people who had belittled me for years laughed like nothing had ever happened. Like that name tag hadn't been printed. Like I didn't exist. I glanced toward the check-in table one last time. Lucy the family disappointment. The words no longer stung. They just confirmed what I had always known. To them, I was not a daughter. I was not even considered a sister. She is not even considered a human being. I was a punchline they didn't expect to fight back. I took a deep breath. I took a deep breath and walked to the center of the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand attention. I simply tapped my glass once lightly with my ring finger. A delicate, clean clink. And the room fell silent. It was fascinating, really. It was remarkable how quickly individuals shifted their attention upon sensing a change in energy. A hush swept through the crowd. Heads turned. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Glasses paused in midair. My father looked up from his circle of business friends. Karen straightened her spine, her smile already growing tight. Olivia blinked in confusion. Hunter raised a brow, half amused. I stood tall, holding nothing but a glass and my truth. "I suppose this is a special occasion," I began calmly. "A celebration for a man many of you admire. A devoted father. A generous host." I let the words hang in the air like perfume sweet, but laced with something bitter. My father always said family is everything. He always emphasized the importance of respecting each other, support each other, stand together regardless of what. I saw a few polite nods. There were also a few uncomfortable smiles. They still thought I was playing along, but then I looked at him directly. But somewhere along the way, I realized that in this family, those rules only apply if you follow the script. This is only applicable if you behave appropriately, if you play the part assigned to you. I paused. And if you don't, my voice lowered, you become a disgrace, an outsider, or a disappointment. The silence turned heavy. Karen's fingers whitened around her wine glass. For years, I tried to earn my place here. I stayed quiet when jokes were made at my expense. When people ignored, forgot, and replaced me, I swallowed the shame. I turned my gaze to Olivia and Hunter. I watched as you were lifted, celebrated, and funded. While I was told to understand and be mature, I could see their faces shift shock, discomfort, maybe guilt. But I didn't stop. I thought that if I worked hard enough, succeeded enough, became someone impressive enough, perhaps with enough effort and success, I could finally gain recognition. I gave a small laugh, empty, quiet. But that day never came. No matter what I did, it was never about my accomplishments. It was about control. It was about fitting into a version of this family I no longer recognize. I lifted my glass slightly, as if to toast. So, thank you. Thank you for the name tag. A few gasps broke the silence. It helped me realize that I've never truly been one of you, and more importantly, I no longer need to be. I turned to my father. He looked stunned, pale. All I ever wanted was for you to be proud of me. Just once. To look at me and say, "That's my daughter." But I've stopped waiting. I stepped forward close enough that he couldn't look away. I'm not Olivia. I'm not Hunter. I'm not someone you can mold. And I'm no longer someone you can ignore. I faced Karen next, my voice steady. You spent years trying to erase me from your perfect little family photo. But unfortunately for you, I'm still here. Karen scoffed, her smile twisting. You're being overly sensitive, Lucy. It was just a joke. I tilted my head, eyes cold. Oh, I know. And I have a joke too. I raised my glass one final time. Happy birthday, Dad. And congratulations to all of you, because this will be the last time any of you ever see me. A collective inhale swept through the room. It was as silent as a crashing wave. Hunter looked stunned. Olivia's mouth fell open. My father tried to speak, Lucy, don't, but I didn't let him finish. I placed my glass down on the table with calm finality. I turned on my heel and walked. No screaming, no tears. There was just the quiet weight of my decision trailing behind me like a shadow. No one could erase. The door silently closed behind me, akin to the final punctuation at the conclusion of a lengthy, agonizing sentence. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I walked steadily down the steps of my father's mansion, past the hedges trimmed like soldiers, past the valet who stared at me with wide eyes, past the gleaming cars parked with precision. The night was cool. The stars are faint. But for the first time in years, the air felt light. I climbed into my car and closed the door. My heart was pounding not from fear, not from shame, but from adrenaline. My heart was pounding from the high of finally choosing myself. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, staring at the quiet road ahead. I really did it. This is not a dream, not in some fantasy version of the confrontation I used to rehearse in the shower. I stood in the middle of the room, looked each one in the eye, and said, enough. My phone buzzed. Texts, calls, and notifications are pouring in like water from a broken faucet. Karen, you've gone too far. Come back now. Olivia, are you seriously trying to ruin everything? Hunter, talk to Dad. You owe him that. Dad, calling. The first stared at the screen. I watched the screen ring, then declined. A second later, Dad, Lucy, come back. We need to talk. But I had nothing left to say. I turned off the phone and drove home in silence. The next morning, sunlight spilled into my small apartment, casting soft golden lines across the floor. The world outside continued as if nothing had happened. But inside me, everything had shifted. I made coffee, toasted some bread. I sat by the window in my pajamas, watching birds land on the power lines. No more fake dinners. There will be no more careless silences. No more looking over my shoulder for approval that would never come. That day, I opened my phone again. There are dozens more messages to be sent. This time, I didn't respond. I didn't feel guilt. I felt peace. 3 days later, an unknown number called. I answered. It was my father. His voice was low, controlled. He continued to deliver orders in the same tone, without offering any apologies. You can't just walk away from family like this. I closed my eyes. Are you calling to control me? Or to actually say you're sorry? Silence. He couldn't answer because he didn't understand the question. Don't be selfish, Lucy, he finally said. I smiled. That word, selfish. They had used it on me my whole life whenever I asked for fairness, for truth, for space to breathe. You keep saying that word like I should feel ashamed, I said softly. But if protecting my peace is selfish, then yes, I am. He didn't speak again. And I ended the call. No goodbye, just peace. In the weeks that followed, something strange happened. Nothing. No more texts. No more pressure. There will be no more guilt. The silence that used to terrify me, now wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Occasionally, I'd wonder, was I too harsh? Too final? And then I'd remember all the nights I waited at the door. We skipped all the birthdays. I enjoy all the jokes at my expense, all the ways I was told, without words, that I didn't belong. And I knew walking away wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. I still live in the same small apartment, still water my tiny plants by the window every morning, still buy myself fresh flowers on Fridays. I still work late into the night, building the business I created from nothing. I don't hear from them anymore. And that is a gift. There is no need for further proof, no more begging, no more shrinking myself to fit into a frame I was never meant for. I've chosen a different life. He was a man without applause but full of truth. I am one without obligation but rich in peace. One no longer waits for love from those who never knew how to give it. Real freedom doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from accepting yourself. And I have. Fully. Finally. Have you ever had to say goodbye to someone you thought loved you? Do you believe blood makes a family, or is it something deeper? Share your thoughts below. And if Lucy's story spoke to you, don't forget to follow the channel for more stories of truth, healing, and choosing yourself.